ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we are discussing Carrion, the video game where it's a Metroidvania, but you're the creature from the movie The Thing. Or Alien, like any 80s horror movie where there's some sort of creature that's eating people. And joining me to talk about this horrible waking nightmare is Pete Busby.
Hey, everybody.
You did this to us.
I did. I'm the one who picked this horrible waking nightmare. But I suffered through it with you both, so we at least have that solidarity. So I have a fun fact as well. I didn't have one on aliens or horrible flesh monsters. This one's about... I know. I'm sorry. This one's about George Reeves. So George Reeves was basically the original Superman.
Yes.
Not later Christopher Reeve. Gets a little confusing. This was George Reeves. And he would do public appearances in his Superman outfit, which originally wasn't red and blue. I'm pretty sure it was brown because the show was in black and white anyway. But when he would do these appearances, he was very afraid of meeting children because they had trouble separating him and his character. They just thought he was Superman. And there's at least one instance where a kid pulled a gun on him because Superman's bulletproof. And he was going to shoot George Reeves in the chest because he thought it would just bounce off. And luckily George Reeves said, yeah, no, it would definitely bounce off me, but it would probably kill one of these other people. So you don't really want to do that, do you? And then he got the gun away from the kid and then probably freaked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So George Reeves almost shot in the chest by children who thought he was Superman.
That's amazing. When at first you said he did not like to meet with children, I just thought maybe he hated kids, like the grubby hands.
They do have creepy tiny little hands, like raccoons.
There are many reasons you wouldn't want to hang out with children, but if they try to shoot you, that's also a good indication not to spend much time around them.
Very reasonable stance he took.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the problem of the kid believing that this man is Superman and not being able to separate reality from fiction. But the second, possibly more alarming part of that story is that kid was able to get a gun to shoot George Reeves without
that's
trouble.
Another great point. Yeah. Just, kid had a gun, whatever. I mean, it was the 1950s. Things were different then.
Yeah,
probably a 2-pack-a-day smoker, too.
2-pack-a-day smoker, the milkman was walking around and everyone was strapped. It was a different time. Not as different as I'd like. That other voice you heard earlier, M. Palladino, other co-host. Hello, M.
Hello. I've very rarely played a game that filled me with, a deep nausism, as I was playing it, because I was the monster and not because there were monsters after me. This game's pretty gross. Just very viscerally upsetting on almost every level. Thanks for picking it, Pete.
Hey, I agree with everything you said. In my defense, Steam loves it.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know what that says about Steam.
Yeah, I mean, people at PAX loved it when I saw it being demoed at PAX. At the very least, Carrion does not deceive you in any way about what it's about. As soon as you boot the game up, there's a writhing mouth with a tongue sticking... Not a mouth, that's underselling it. There are several dozen mouths on screen and a tongue that is your cursor. So, at least the advertising is up front. You understand what you're getting into. There's no trickery. It's just a nightmare from start to finish. But before we talk about nightmares from start to finish, let's talk about fun things like getting in touch with the show. You can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have comment sections on all of our podcasts, and I can't deviate from my spiel even a little bit. You can also email us at deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And you can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. If you do so, you'll get access to our Discord, where you can talk with the hosts and other fans of the show. And also, make suggestions about games we should play, things we can look at. There's definitely games that we have played recently that have been suggested via the Discord. And if you were to, say, join the Discord, you could also be on the Discord report.
The Discord report. This week on the Discord report, ZP is trying to get us to play chess. For some reason.
Yes.
Do you know why ZP is obsessed with getting us to play chess?
Oh,
Netflix, probably.
He's a big chess fan in general. He's always been a big chess fan, and now that the Queen's Gambit has happened, chess is back in the zeitgeist, baby.
And there was that Twitch streamers playing chess deal, so that probably had something to do with it. So yeah, we're probably gonna play chess at some point for one of our game nights. What else? People are building computers. It's expensive. There's a bunch of other stuff in here.
People keep trying to get us to play Unlimited Saga, and no.
I don't know why. Do you know why we're having our arms twisted?
What is Unlimited Saga?
It's a very bad video game made by...
we play those a lot.
We do play those a lot, but it's both very bad and very long. And that's the problem, really. It's an inscrutable maze of systems. Friend of the show and occasional Final Fantasy co-host Jeff Rude he played it for the Community Endurance Run once, and wanted to play all of Unlimited Saga and gave up. So that's about there's a statement of quality for you. He tried to play it, wanted to get into it, and then gave up. Another thing that happened was Extra Life. Extra Life has occurred. CP and I did our Extra Life streams.
How did that go?
Went okay. I raised a couple $100 by playing the Sacramento Kings, by trying to be a GM and building up the Sacramento Kings in NBA 2K21. And after a while, honestly, NBA 2K's GM mode is painstakingly slow, and so that was a real problem. So that happened. ZP went back in with his streams where he was playing bad. Well, let's not say bad. RPG Maker made games. So played a bunch of those. He raised, I think, almost $1,000.
He said that there were a bunch from this one person in Brazil. I think that was really good. All of them
were from this one person.
Oh.
So it was the same person who made a dozen plus games in RPG Maker over years. And you could see them slowly getting better at the tool, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I don't remember if we covered our Roller Coaster Tycoon stream, but yeah.
That also happened.
We made roller coasters that mostly kill people. It was fun.
Platypuses glow under blacklight. We have no idea why.
Mm-hmm. They do.
I'm still going through the Discord. You posted this yesterday or a few days ago. There was a headline that just says platypuses glow under blacklight, and we don't know why.
What is the subheader, though?
What other secrets are they hiding?
That is a great headline.
Yep, we don't know. We need to interrogate these platypuses, get to the bottom of this. So that's what's going on in the Discord. Feel free to join if you can. Oh, yes.
ZP wants to do a food podcast where we tell him recipes to make. That was the other thing I wanted to... I don't know if we're actually going to do this because I doubt ZP will actually make the recipes that we want him to make.
Probably not correctly, at the very least.
Probably not. I'm sure he's going to substitute sugar and salt or whatever, or some cursed content, put ketchup on it, probably.
Oops, I accidentally added dog food to this. Whoops.
Oh no.
What a mistake.
Weird.
So honest, this mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's we have a lot of off-week podcasts. Sometimes we do Crazy Ex-Girlfriend podcasts when Pete's gone. Sometimes we come up with other topics. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we do the food podcast. Though, we are open, listeners. If you do not want to hear a food podcast, or do, please write in. Let us know. Give us some feedback. Do you like our little food segments we occasionally do? What if there were, 60 minutes of those?
Jesus. Is that really what it's going to be?
Someone's going to die.
Oh, no.
I don't know. We'd have to see. Well, that is it for the Discord report. I have my obsession of the week. It is time for that. And my obsession right now is I got a PS5.
Good for you.
And I don't get to play it. You know why? Because I have to play fucking Final Fantasy 13-2. We're going to have a 13-2 podcast, but I plugged in my PS5, I sat down, I laid down on the floor like an adult, and I started playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake. That game's really good. I got the remake months ago for the PS4, knowing that I probably would never actually get a PS4, but I was planning on getting a PS5. And I just had a bunch of store credit. I traded in a bunch of games, and that was the only thing that I thought I will eventually play. So I finally got to experience a modern console. I was getting everything set up. Everything looks gorgeous on that thing. And then I remembered, oh shit, I need to play Final Fantasy 13-2 for the Final Fantasy Podcast series. And so now I'm fucking traveling through time with Sarah, who I hate, and Noel, who I also hate, playing maybe my least favorite combat system ever devised by man or beast, just for hours, because those games are interminable. Hey, what if they took the Final Fantasy 13 combat system, made it better, and by better I mean you don't lose if your main character just dies, and they made it slightly faster to get you to actually customizing your characters. They added Pokemon to it, but then they made almost all of the locations recycled locations, and then they just reuse everything over and over and over again. What then?
Awesome. Sounds great.
What if they added a time travel plot?
Is that what that is?
It's a time travel.
Time travel?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, they took the inscrutable, completely bonkers plot of Final Fantasy 13 and then added time travel on top of it.
You know what they say, nothing can go wrong if you add time travel to your already complicated plot.
You know, on the one hand, I'm like, wow, this is extra inscrutable now. But then on the other hand, I remember that 13 sucked. It sucked shit. And anything you can do to make that plot different is fine.
Is that an expression? Sucked
shit. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It must
as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible. 13 is the worst Final Fantasy game we've ever played. It will stay down there. 13-2 is not threatening it. But damn it.
I was in a game store the other day and I saw there was the 3-disc copy of 13 and it was $3, which is barely worth the discs that it was printed on.
Good.
It's pretty bad.
It's so bad. So yeah, my obsession is my PS5, which is just mocking me. It's sitting in the corner, mocking me. I can't even have it plugged in because the outlet is taken right now by my 10-year-old PS3, so I can play Final Fantasy 13-2. My obsession is getting 13-2 out of my life.
Mm-hmm. Are there games for the PS5 yet?
Not very many. But
Did you get any?
It comes preloaded with Astro's Play. It's either Playground or Playhouse, which is seemingly like a 3D platformer, like a Super Mario Galaxy sort of deal. I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I will check that out at some point. The UI is really good on the PS5. It's pretty snappy. The graphics, obviously, are incredible, and so far my experience has been good. It's just I haven't gotten to have very much of it because I've got an FF13 shape blockade in front of me, and I will remove it. So yeah, look forward to that podcast. I'm sure ZP will tell me 13.2 is not as bad as 13, which is true, but I don't know. Stepping on a nail isn't as bad as shooting myself in the foot. They're both fucking terrible. Without further ado.
You should just play Final Fantasy VII Remake and then have a stream of someone playing Final Fantasy 13 too in the background. Have the best of both worlds? Question mark.
See, I'm an honest dealer.
Mm-mm.
I have played, when we say that we have played every Final Fantasy on that list, which is a long list at this point, I have in fact played all of them. I have not skimped. I've not gotten near the end and said, oh, I'm not going to finish it. I have finished every single one of these fucking things. Even the bad ones. And here we are. So yeah, we're going to find out where between FF9 and FF13, 13.2 lands. But right about now, it feels like it's about a FF10.2 amount of good, which is like the bottom half of the list. That's the demarcation line between the good Final Fantasies and the bad ones, is 10.2. So we'll see. We'll see where it ends up on that Rubicon. All right, without further ado, let's discuss Carrion. So, Pete, you picked this. Tell me, explain to me what Carrion is.
All right. Well, Gino, you gave a pretty good one-line synopsis at the beginning, right? You're playing as the monster from The Thing as you rampage through what seems to be, has all the hallmarks of a secret government research facility. You're trying to escape, and on the way, you are going to kill as many scientists as you possibly can. You're going to eat their bodies for sustenance to fill your health bar, and you're going to shoot out little tentacles and weird spikes and crazy amounts of mouths and just sort of your writhing mass of flesh rampaging its way towards the sun. I think that captures it, right?
Yep, and it's Metroidvania style, so as you rampage through each of the environments, you will find hazardous waste containers that you can jam yourself into, and once you jam yourself into it, you will emerge reborn with even more disgusting powers than you had before. You also, like the save points, are holes in the wall, basically, that you, again, jam yourself into, and once you've jammed yourself into a hole, you leave behind a horrible maw that just exists in the world from then on that you can go back into. So yeah, it's just gross. You start out gross and it gets progressively grosser as you go.
Yeah, it's all horrible the whole way through, which I think is a good moment to remember that the phrase academics like to use is that evolution has no teleology, which basically means that look, evolution isn't aiming for anything. We like to think that, humans, this is what evolution was striving for. It wasn't. Evolution is perfectly fine with a gross mass of horrible, horrible flesh, so long as that is the best suited thing for that particular environment.
Yeah, and we can say that, without a doubt, the flesh ball is the best suited thing for the subterranean environment. It is the peak. If I've learned anything from movies, it's that if you ever encounter the perfect life form, you need to kill it.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Immediately. And like most...
Do not wait.
No. Like most horror movies, the perfect life form, once again, susceptible to fire. Usual weakness. Same thing in Alien. Who knows why.
Same thing in The Thing. They always hate fire.
Yeah, I think it's weird.
But yeah, this...
I mean, most things hate fire.
That's an excellent point.
I don't think anything enjoys being set on fire, but these things particularly do not like it.
This is a great point. Great point. So the first thing that jumped out to me about Carrion is the control scheme. So this is a Metroidvania game, and everyone here played it on PC, correct?
I played it on Switch.
Okay.
Ooh.
So the control scheme is probably different on Switch.
Yes.
Switch, is it controlled via thumbstick?
Movement is thumbstick, and then the tentacles are the right thumbstick. So you sort of direct it in that, and then it's the right bumper in order to actually shoot the tentacles at something. So you need to aim it with the thumbstick, and then, when you want to manipulate something, you gotta hold down the trigger.
Okay, so it's kind of a twin-stick shooter almost. But
yeah.
You're a flesh ball.
Mm-hmm.
On PC, it's left-click and drag, and you're basically the flesh ball is basically your cursor, or it follows your cursor, and then right-click will shoot out a tentacle, and you can direct it around. So you're planted in place whenever you want to shoot out a tentacle. Can you move and tentacle on Switch?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on PC, I had a real hard time moving and tentacling at the same time.
Some of the, like, sometimes you just want to, like, lash a tentacle out, grab someone, and then, like, immediately go into the little hole and eat them. So that would probably be kind of hard to do if you can't do both at the same time. I'm sorry you didn't get to experience that.
It's fine. It's fine. Maybe there's an alternate control scheme that I could have set. I did not find it to be a big impediment, because this game isn't especially difficult. You're a flesh monster and everything else is people, so it's not actually that hard to get a one-over on them. Pete, did you find the control scheme difficult or at least interesting?
Yeah, I mean, so part of what makes the control scheme so interesting is just what you're controlling. You know, like we said, it's a big blob of flesh with tentacles. So, I mean, if you ask, okay, how do I map this onto like a human-centered control scheme, you're going to have issues in the first place. So that was one of my first questions when I booted up this game. I was like, all right, how is this thing just generally going to move?
Yeah, it shoots tentacles onto each and every wall and just kind of, it really moves smoothly. It gets more and more cumbersome as it gets larger and larger. But early on, this thing is incredibly nimble. You're just whipping through these screens. And it's very clear that these people have no chance. You're too fast. They've got guns. They eventually get flamethrowers, but your creature is too fast, and you only basically need to make contact with someone for half a second or so, and they're dead. So once you figured out like how to control this thing, what did you think of the actual Metroidvania style? Moving around these different screens and different levels, acquiring new powers to unlock blockades that you couldn't unlock before, like that sort of design.
It makes sense for like a research facility if we're just talking about story level, because you'd expect multiple different departments. But I mean, if we can talk about the abilities in sort of a macro sense, I can think of maybe one that really changed gameplay, and the rest were mostly irrelevant.
Yeah, I found a lot of them got you past whatever their specific blockade was. Like, you know, if there was a laser beam and you got the ability to go invisible, you could pass through it. But I didn't use invisibility all that much outside of getting around obstacles. And I found that was the case for many of my powers. Like, I'd use them to get through the obstacle you have to use it on. But other than that, I wasn't necessarily... You didn't need to do most of that stuff. Pete, what was the power you thought changed gameplay a lot?
Yeah, so the one I found myself using the most and actually found the most interesting was parasitism.
Yeah.
So you basically infect people's bodies, and then you can then control them. You can shoot other people, you can open doors and things, and then you can eventually explode them from the inside, and you take over where they were standing. So other than that, I didn't really use many of the abilities. But parasitism, very fun. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, the parasitism just giving you the ability to, at the least, just kill whoever you infect. It's a one-hit kill on anything you touch. And then once you've killed them, you get to puppet them around from then on. If they are unarmored, you will burst out of them when they die. If they are armored, you will just they'll just drop where they are and you stay exactly where you were. But controlling some of the armored characters, like there are what appear to be soldiers walking around among the scientists, and those soldiers will have better guns, they'll have flamethrowers, they'll have machine guns, they'll have shields. So they're the ones that you really, they're a pain in the ass to kill in the first place, and then being able to insta-kill one of them and then use their guns, because I found that the soldiers were very bad at killing another one of their own. So just taking control of one of them was enough to take out like an entire room in most cases without putting myself in jeopardy. Did you find... Oh, go ahead.
They will notice that pretty quickly, though. If you start to do it when one of them's watching, they will not let you infect one of their guys, so they will start shooting at you. But that also has one of the hardest puzzles in the game, because there was like this one section where you're stuck in a singular space, and the only way to get out is you need to find a body that was already there which I could not see because it was about the size of 3 pixels on the ground. And so I was in there for about 20 minutes before I looked it up. And someone on Reddit was like, I'm stuck in this room. What do I do? They're like, go find the soldier. It's like, oh, I see. So that's the only way I got out of there. Thanks, Reddit.
Yeah, that room was a huge pain in the ass for me, too. I'll just say.
Yeah.
I know the exact room you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah,
I didn't even... There was no context for that room in the Reddit post. They were just like, I'm stuck in a room. It's a nuclear reactor. And I was like, oh, this is it. Okay. Thank you. Other than that, there weren't any puzzles that, like, I got stuck on. That was just like, it took so long because I couldn't see the fucking guy. Other than that, I like the slam. You get, like, if you are in your, like, there are 3 stages of your monster form. If you are in the second one, you can slam into stuff, and that's used to break wooden structures. And also it will mess up pretty much anything in your way. If there is a bunch of people in there, you just slam through a barrier and take them all out in one hit. So I like that one. But as far as actually affecting gameplay, a lot of them are just superfluous. Like, one of them lets you grow spikes. That one is useless because I would just slam into people and they would die. Invisibility is only good if you're going through lasers. What else is there?
You can shoot a net.
Oh yeah, that one is only useful for getting through barriers because...
Killing drones.
Oh, I didn't really use it on the drones. I just grabbed the drones and, like, swung them around a little bit.
There are some drones that have propellers.
Mm-hmm.
Those drones will cut you if you get close to them. And I found that the only way to knock them out of the sky was with... Well, if I was small, the only way to do it was to use the net.
Those nets, though, are maybe the most gruesome of all the abilities.
No.
Because, well, I'm just saying,
so?
no, just for this reason, I mean, there's definitely a debate. Everything's gruesome. But for only the reason that they're the most screams when you use the net.
Yeah, they're alive when you net them in a way that they aren't with all the other abilities.
There are a lot of screams no matter what you do. The sound design is actually pretty good, but also terrible.
Very squishy.
I did not like it, but I respected what they were going for.
Yeah. For me, the last power you get, like shooting gigantic spikes at things and ripping those spikes back, I found that if you fired those into a room full of people, just limbs went everywhere. You didn't even eat them. They were just, everything was cut in half by the end of it. And using that, even mechanized enemies and walkers and things with machine guns, like, you'll tear the whole thing apart if you fire your spines into a room and make contact with anything. So that was the most gruesome for me. The first time I did that in a room full of people and just got nothing but torsos coming back at me, I was like, okay, this is fucked up. This is powerful.
Yeah, well, I will say, so I don't like it necessarily, but I do respect Carrion for breaking this sort of first-person shooter trope where the bodies just vanish after a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, this started all the way back with GoldenEye. I mean, probably even earlier, honestly. But, like, you shoot a person, you look at them, there's no blood, and they're just gone after a while. In Carrion, there's blood. There's blood everywhere. There's limbs everywhere. It's gross.
There's blood everywhere forever. Like,
you are just a mass of blood, basically. And every time you kill a person, if they are not armored, you can eat them to grow more of your biomass. They're like your health packs, basically.
Yeah, I would always, whenever I encountered a room full of people, I was like, I see I must be big soon. If they were unarmed, like anytime I found a bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I think the low-key funniest moments of this game are when you get to a bathroom and there's a person in the last stall and you just eat everyone in the stalls before them, and they just don't move or react in any way.
It's like, it's probably fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's very that Jurassic Park where the T-Rex eats the lawyer, or
is
just
good.
cowering in the bathroom. Yeah, it's one of those.
For how,
Usually I try to be nice to those guys. I would just like open the door very gently and then I would eat them.
for how clinical it like wants to sound, biomass is also a disgusting word.
It is. It's also disgusting. So one of the big puzzle pieces in this game is you find pools that you can deposit your biomass in, which basically means just spitting balls of flesh into a pool. And that's your way of controlling how big your flesh mound is. You can go from the biggest to the smallest, and then you can retrieve that biomass later if you want to upgrade again.
Can we,
Yeah.
while we're talking about gross things, I would like to return to the movement just for a second.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the way this thing moves is super gross. And it got me thinking about something I read about spiders a long time ago. So, like, humans have this sort of intrinsic aversion to certain methods of movement. So there's this article by this guy, Graham Davey. It's called Characteristics of Individuals with Fear of Spiders. It's from the Journal of Anxiety Research.
Oh, God.
It's like the most horrible journal in the world. But like the top two things people are afraid of with respect to spiders, it's not fear of being bitten. The first one is legginess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And the second one is erratic movement. So there's just something about the way like spiders or like centipedes scuttle around that just creep people out. And I think it's the same thing with this sort of like gelatinous flesh ball. The way it just sort of oozes around is intrinsically creepy in the same way spiders are.
Yeah, and I will say, as you get bigger and bigger, your movement through the space will catch things in your tentacles by accident in a way that's unsettling. Like in the rooms where I would use my spike powers to just kill everything in a giant burst, if you just moved through the room from then on, you'd find just like torsos and legs getting caught up in your tentacles without you even reaching out to eat them. They just would be stuck on you in a really unsettling way.
Yeah, it reminded me, we're all nerds here. You've probably seen Akira.
Yep.
It reminded me
Yeah.
of the big flesh blob from the end of that, how it just sort of like snatched a tentacle out and just sucked something into its biomass.
I hated that ending. That ending was so gross.
Oh, it was disgusting.
When the woman gets crushed inside the meat. Ugh, just gratuitous. This whole
Akira.
game is pretty much that.
Yep. This game it's got big Akira vibes, it's got big Carrion vibes, not Carrion vibes, big The Thing vibes. Like, this game could not be referencing 80s sci-fi horror, late 70s, early 80s sci-fi horror any harder if it tried. Down to the flashback scenes. And do you want to talk about what happens? There are flashbacks in this game. Weirdly enough, your flesh blob has a memory.
Yeah, that's one of the most unsettling things about the flesh bob, which is saying a lot. Basically, you get these moments where you crawl into this, I don't even know what it is. It's just a space in the wall, and then you have a flashback. Yeah, a science hole. And then you are a scientist who is discovering the original whatever the fuck it is. Whatever causes the biomass to become a monster. It infects one of the scientists, and then it proceeds to kill the other two, and then it tries to escape, and then on the way out it gets caught, and there's like a scanner that goes off, and then it just goes berserk and kills everyone, all the soldiers that are around. And that's I think there's 3 instances of flashbacks, maybe 4.
Yep.
But that's basically the summary. You're controlling a human for most of it, which controls very differently when you are used to controlling a orb of tentacles and blood. it's harder to maneuver because you have to actually use like ladders and stuff. You cannot just squirm your way through halls.
Yeah, it becomes a platformer instead of a twin stick shooter.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting from a a standpoint of this really unique movement system. And then we go back and we gotta see, the casual human elements, which also comes back when you infect someone and then you have to like control them to open a gate for you or something. So I guess it's setting precedent for later in the game.
Yeah, definitely. They designed that control scheme. I would love to know if they designed the control scheme because they wanted the possession mechanic and then they used it in the flashback, or if they wanted the flashback and then designed human controls.
The flashback.
It reminded me too. I mean, there are alien references all over this whole game, but it reminded me too of sort of the different ways the aliens and humans in Alien interact with the structure of the ship. So like the aliens basically use the vents as their hallways. Like it's a very different spatial awareness in the same way that like, okay, when you're a human, you have to worry about ladders. Whereas when you're flesh ball, you just sort of roll on through vents, subterranean waterways, whatever you want. It basically just changes the whole floor plan based on your body type, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it completely changes the way you perceive the world around you. There were definitely elements of like doors, ladders, fences that I did not even think of when I was the flesh ball, that as soon as you become human are impossible to navigate, or they become the central way that you move around a space. It's definitely cool to see those dual layerings and how you have to think about the world that you're interacting with. So, is there anything else we want to cover with Carrion? There are a series of, challenge vats you can find. Like there are bonus upgrades you can get for your flesh ball. I didn't find them especially useful, so I didn't go out of my way to get them.
No, it's basically just like energy upgrades. You can become more resistant to fire, which is nice. But I mean, all in all, the combat, the only enemy types you really have to worry about are flamethrowers if there isn't water nearby, or the big walkers with their miniguns. Everything else you sort of breeze through for the most part.
Yeah, and like the drones, if you don't snatch them as soon as they spawn, can be annoying. But I found for the most part I was able to grab them before they started even moving, and then you just kill them immediately. So I didn't find this game to be especially difficult.
No, not really. There was one other thing. We should also mention at the very end, when you become the human again, you escape to downtown Seattle. So Seattle is fucked.
A prequel to Coffee Talk.
Ah, yes. That's how it happened.
Beyond that, though, one other thing I wanted to talk about is there is sort of a nod to a military-industrial complex in operation here, in the same way that, like, in Alien, they basically wanted to get the alien to be a weapon. You know what I mean? Like, this is another sort of hallmark of that era of sci-fi. But sort of the idea of using organisms as weaponry isn't new. It's a very, very sort of old idea. I mean, you can think about Hannibal and his elephants, or a much grimmer example is from the Bible. Who would have thought? There's this guy Samson, and he lit foxes on fire.
Ah.
Yeah, and then released them into the fields of the enemies to burn their crops. That was, I guess, the most efficient way to do that. I don't know. But this whole idea of the military-industrial complex co-opting other organisms to fight, I think is a simultaneously very distressing and very sort of historically interesting idea.
Huh. Yeah, I did not. Flaming arrows seem good enough to burn crops. I don't know.
Yeah, look, anytime you go into the Old Testament, things are going to get wild pretty quick.
Yeah, I've heard about some ridiculous animal weaponry, like in World War I, before they could figure out, I think it was either World War I or World War II, the Allies could not figure out targeting computers yet, and so they trained pigeons to guide bombs. It was never actually deployed, but they basically had the pigeons train. They would peck at different things to kind of lock in on where the bomb should go, like left, right, up, down, and they train them to be like rewarded for determining what like a structure looks like and then guiding a bomb towards a structure. And the pigeon wouldn't come back, but that was an idea. And there was also an idea at World War II to tie fire bombs to bats and then deploy them in Japan. So they would release flying foxes, and then the idea was they would roost at night and get inside of like chimneys and buildings, and then the bombs would detonate and burn down the whole city because they would get inside of the structures in useful ways. So yeah, horrifying.
Yeah, there's modern examples too. A lot of the stuff is working in, I shouldn't say a lot. Some of the things I've heard have been a lot of mine detection, and it's less horrible than you might think when you first say using animals for mine detection. So they can train bees to smell mines, they can train rats to smell mines, and the nice thing about both of those is they don't set off the mines, so they're fine. The hard part about bees is tracking the bees once you release them into the minefield, just sort of seeing where they go.
You know, I'm really happy that someone could shout "release the bees" and have it be in a positive light.
It's nice though to see, like, again, basically the what I assume is the military scientific arm messing around with an alien bioorganism and basically getting their comeuppance. It's sad that it stretches into downtown Seattle, but up until that point, not horrible.
You know, I like to imagine that once the horrible flesh beast arrived in Seattle looking like a person, he just, went to a cafe. Just hung out.
Just settle down. Had some coffee with a mermaid and an orc. Back
Basically,
to coffee talk.
Carrion is Neil's origin story.
Oh.
This is my headcanon.
Sure. Yeah.
It's an Octodad situation.
That makes Neil's quest to, impregnate a human a much creepier scenario.
Oh,
It was always creepy.
That's a good point, too.
It's even creepier when he is a flesh monster.
It's true. Last thought here on Carrion. Do we think that this is actually truly a Metroidvania? Because I found that there's not actually that much backtracking that you do. It felt very linear. They did a good job of placing any of the obstacles that you need to overcome using your newfound powers directly in the path of you when you get that power. So it almost felt like a linear game despite the fact that you're able to backtrack.
I don't know if I even knew how to backtrack, if I could have, because there's no map to this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every Metroidvania that I've played, like Metroid, has the map that you can bring up at any time, or you need to download, new map parts and everything. It's a mechanic. But this game doesn't have any map to speak of, so a lot of the time I was just sort of bumbling along as a gigantic tentacle monster, and then eventually I'd find a thing that I could open because I had the power to do so. So I actually don't know how to come back around to the earlier levels. Once I got too deep into like nuclear reactor, I was like, well, guess we're going straight on to the end.
Yeah, so there's basically a hub world that you start in, and then you'll find different pipes that will allow you to go into different spokes, basically. So there's this hub, and then you spoke off into these other instances. And then once you come back, you usually come back with a new power. So you can move around it. I found, like, at the end of the game, once I had all the powers and I got back to the hub world and I was looking to finish the game, that's where I had some trouble because I had the power to go everywhere. And up until that point, I was basically gated, so I could only really be shunted off to the next world I'm supposed to go to. But once I had all the powers and was capable of backtracking, I just didn't really want to because the extra powers that you unlock, even if you required different upgrades to get to them, they're just not that powerful. They're not that useful. So it wasn't worth 100%ing it.
No, the other thing I noticed with it too is this is sort of the drawback, maybe, or the counter of all the like different ways the biomass can move through the world, is that sometimes I had trouble deciding what was a door or not.
Yeah.
Like when you play Mario or something and you see a pipe, you're like, oh, that's a pipe. I go down those. But like when you're a flesh monster that can go through vents or tubes or crash through doors or like weird little holes in the wall that you leave your mouth behind on, it's sort of hard to tell sometimes when you're like, oh, this is a thing I can move through to get to a new area.
Yeah, and once everything was covered in gore and viscera, it became very difficult to discern what was interactable in a lot of cases. So yeah, I did not feel the strong compulsion to double back, and thankfully the game doesn't ask you to very often. But it made it feel much more linear than a game that has its structure often does. Usually games like this lean much heavier into going into a place, being blocked, and then coming back to it. But because the only way to identify potential progress points is through an echolocation system that just like lets you know, hey, is there something you can infest in a given direction? It just made it so that navigating around and doubling back was a big pain. And so I just didn't interact with it.
Ironically, I got an upgrade for that made it so it detected bodies that were nearby, which actually made the echolocation basically useless because it would detect bodies or like points to infect. And so if I didn't clear all the bodies, then I would just be like, well, now I don't know if this is a body or a save point. So I'll just head in that direction and find out. And most of the time it was a body.
Yeah, there were always bodies.
I guess
Yep.
then you just need to finish your plate.
Yeah, pretty much. I
tried
just
to always
finished
finish my plate.
everything. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think that's it for Carrion. Anything else we need to go over?
Did you guys, in the settings, there was an option to turn the HUD off? Did you guys use that at all?
No.
Yeah,
I actually,
that's fine.
yeah, I didn't like the HUD for most of it because it, like, weirdly doesn't jive with the rest of the mechanics of the game. Like, it's actually very, I don't know, it felt incongruent when you're, like, this writhing mass of flesh to have, like, your health at the top of the screen and also the buttons. So I turned that off for a while, and I was just sort of feeling it out. But the only problem I had with that was when I got a new power, the thing that pops up that tells you what the power does is part of the HUD.
Oh.
So I had no idea what I picked up. And that was like when I got the spikes, like the big spikes. I was like pressing buttons, like I don't know how to use this. I fucked up, and then I had to turn it back on to figure out what I was supposed to do. So that was the only downside. But
I would imagine that
most of it.
and the energy meter, right?
Oh yeah, the energy meter also goes away, which, you know, if you're not using your invisibility that often, it doesn't really matter. I would just, like, whenever I found an electric point, I would just siphon whatever I could and then assume I would be good. But I wasn't, like, stressed about that at all.
Yeah, I didn't find that I was ever really capped by the energy. For the most part, you use it to get through the obstacle, and then you don't use it anymore.
Yeah. It was another one of those things, like, if you found a place to leave your biomass or, what else?
A room full of people.
A room full of people, yeah. It was like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to use this pretty soon. And so it just was an indicator, like, I will probably have to go invisible at some point in this puzzle. And that was more, you know, it didn't really affect anything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Em, it is now your time to pick a game again.
It's my turn.
This is probably the last game before Game of the Year, so shoot your shot.
All right. I've had this game in my Steam library for a little while. I got it when it was on sale. It is now on sale for even less than I paid for it. So you guys are in luck.
Aha, you fool.
I know. Every time. we are going to play Nino Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch Remastered.
Can we get a spelling?
N-I space N-O space K-U-N-I, Wrath of the White Witch.
Oh no.
This is you might have heard about this game a while ago. It was
I did.
a Studio Ghibli production.
Okay, good
they
start.
They made a video game, and we're gonna play it.
This game's like 70 hours long.
It's very long. I don't think we're gonna play the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not expect that we will make it through the entire thing, especially with you playing Final Fantasy 13. I just want to get a sense of it.
Yeah, but we will, sure. We'll play Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. I was hoping if you were on a JRPG kick, we were going to play Yakuza 7.
I haven't picked up any of the Yakuza games yet.
Oh, I will pick that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You should look up some videos of the summons in Yakuza.
Oh yeah, I've seen videos. I just haven't, it seems like there's a lot of stuff to that series.
Yeah, well, in this latest one, it's a JRPG instead of a GTA clone.
Interesting.
And they decided that they would have summons, but because it's supposed to be the real world, all the summons are you just like summoning a dude. Like you call a person on their cell phone, and then they show up and fuck everyone up.
There are some interesting design choices to that series. I'd be interested to look into it at some point.
Yeah, I would recommend that you at least watch the summon video for... There's a bunch of them. I don't want to spoil any of them. They're all so good. Huh. Well, next up, we are not playing Yakuza 7. Instead, we are playing Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch from Studio Ghibli and Level 5.
It'll be fun.
Yes. And just housekeeping, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. That's our email. You can support the show, patreon.com/deeplistens. Thank you, Pete.
Yep, no problem. I appreciate you all indulging me in a game that ended up a lot more distressing than I think we all anticipated.
Yeah, that is fine. That's fine. We each pick distressing games in different directions sometimes. Sometimes I pick a game that's really unsettling to play. Sometimes you pick one that's a giant flesh monster. We all have our mistakes. Though this game was good. That's not to say this is a bad game. It's just
a good game.
It's just gross.
A gruesome one, yeah.
Thank you, Em.
Thank you. I do think this game could have been like an hour shorter. But
agreed.
Other than that,
Fair.
I think it was fine. It just stretched on a little long for my taste, but that's just me. But yeah, good gross choice. It'll probably win the horror award in a month?
Sure.
A few weeks.
Yeah.
And thank you, listeners. Till next time, peace.